Right, folks, time for a special guest this week, and it is a real pleasure and privilege to welcome this particular gentleman onto the show. And, of course, it is Mr. Gerry McGhee of Brighton Rock. Welcome to Rockposer's Roulette.
Thanks, Dan.
Great to have you on the show. Obviously, the second member of Brighton Rock I've managed to drag on.
Okay.
Obviously, I've had Greg on before, but it's great to have you on because of what is going on with Brighton Rock. I mean, it seems to be everything's going mad for you at the moment.
Yeah, it's all kind of reemerged, and basically kind of evolved from doing the show at Firefest and a warm-up show before that to us talking about doing the new record and getting that rolling, and then a couple more shows were in between there as well, and then this Kiss tribute album, World with Heroes, that we got involved with, which has spawned into a video as well as a new single that we've completed there. And then, Warner's reissuing Take a Deep Breath and Young, Wild and Free, and they're getting loaded up onto iTunes. I guess I think Young, Wild and Free is available on iTunes, but in Canada here, they're all getting relaunched, and they just seem to be digging deep into all the old catalog, Honeymoon, Harem Scarum, Trooper, Brighton, Streetheart, and reissuing all the Canadian stuff, which is really cool.
Have they given a reason why they're reissuing, or has there been a demand suddenly, or...?
I think they realize that there's still a market for that kind of stuff, especially now with traditional retail not having deep catalog and a lot of online sales, and with Amazon platforms and other sites like Screaming CD and even the Isotope one we have here, that people still want that stuff, and they are the people that still actually buy physical product. So to kind of redo them and put them back out there and use the format of iTunes to kind of put it back in the limelight, I think they're realizing it. What they did realize, though, is how poorly their vaults were taken care of, because the guy actually told me that Take a Deep Breath was sitting on the floor with the tape actually pulled out of a box.
Sure.
And they have none of the videos of any of the bands, and that's millions and millions of dollars of money that just got thrown into an empty room. And through the years, as they've moved buildings because they've downsized like everybody else, they lost a lot of the content. I mean, they didn't have a master for Take a Deep Breath, and they didn't have a master for Young, Wild and Free. We had to kind of find it and get it able to go through the process, I guess, where it's being taken from back into audio, from analog to digital. And then it's been a big job for the guy who's done it, Ken Berry from Warner. But I think he knows that people will still buy the physical product.
Well, certainly, when I look at the certain fan sites and forums, the real collectors are always preferring the physical product. They always want either the CD or what is really great now. There's a resurgence in vinyl, which I seem to bring up in every interview I do, but it's a personal love. But it is still a physical product sale that people want from the basic. Everyone assumes, oh, that's it. It's all on iTunes now. Far from it. The real collectors, they want something. They want that product to look at. They want the sleeve notes. They want the actual CD. I mean, I prefer buying the CD. I can rip it to my own bit rate or what have you. I prefer it. You generally get a higher standard of album or what have you.
But no, I'm the same way. I mean, I put all that stuff onto my iPod, but it's off the physical CDs. And you're completely right about vinyl. Vinyl has gone absolutely through the roof. I mean, we have it here. I think we've got close to 9,000 titles in stock. And it's, everything from AC/DC to Iron Maiden and everything that's coming out new. Alice in Chains, the Black Sabbath, are all coming out with vinyl pressing. And the funny thing is, it's the kids that have really kicked this resurgence back in on it. Like half these guys weren't even born when vinyl was, still around, and they're the ones that are freaking out with this big format, because what it's like trying to read a CD these days. It's almost impossible to read the lyrics on it. So it kind of helps the older guys that eyesight's kind of gone and we can take a boo at it. But I'm like you. I've gone completely back into it. I bought a brand new turntable. I've started to collect all my favorite records again. I actually just got both the new the Dream Theater ones on vinyl and older stuff, and it's great. I love it. And the sound quality, there's no comparison to a real good vinyl pressing. Nothing sounds like it.
Are the ones that you've got in stock, you said, are they 180 gram vinyl?
Yeah, pretty well. Most of them all are, because they're all the reissues. like stuff like the Joshua Tree. I remember when that came out, it was only a single record. Now it's a double album. With them cutting it slower and with the heavier vinyl. So it's mostly, even Kiss Destroyer, all that stuff. It's all the remasters that they're going nuts, grabbing everything and putting it back out there. I mean, one of the things I did with a contract I just did with Warner is on reissues that we're doing with them is I got the rights to do vinyl because I figured it's just going to keep growing.
Oh, that'd be brilliant because I think I've only got Take a Deep Breath on vinyl. Yeah. Which is when it was originally released when I bought it. So and the other stuff I've only got on either CD or what have you. So it'd be lovely to get the other albums on vinyl. It has to be said.
Yeah, I'll send you. I've got extra copies of the first EP that we did on vinyl, and a Young Wild and Free. So I'll send them to you. I've got a whack of them sitting in my house.
That will be absolutely superb. Well, going forward on from obviously releases, you're back at Firefest. Did you see that coming?
We kind of hoped it did. We had that much fun. We really did. I mean, Kieran and everybody there, just the way the show was run, we really wanted to come back and do it. So when he called me, I think it was a couple of weeks later when we got back that he called me and said, what are you doing? I said, well, we're going to do a record because we're having fun. We're hoping to have something ready for the Firefest show because we haven't even done any of this in the shows that we've done. We haven't even done any of the new songs just so it doesn't end up on YouTube and everything else. But yeah, we were glad to do it and come back. It was just a great time. It was a great show.
It was fabulous. I mean, as I said to Greg when I had him on the show before, I mean, you guys went down an absolute storm. Okay, I'm somewhat biased being the fan that I am, but no, it was. I mean, it was superb to see you guys, and the fact that you sounded like Brighton Rock. You weren't a shadow of your former selves. I mean, yes, I have to go way back in the brain cells to remember the last time I saw you guys, which is 25 plus years ago. But when Greg said to me that you guys were coming back this year, I mean that was it. I mean that was a ticket booked straight away. There was no doubt in my mind. A fabulous time meeting up with you guys, and we had a really good laugh. So, what was actually interesting talking to you guys and talking to Stevie and Greg, etc., is how little known in Canada a lot of the sort of the newer European bands are. There just doesn't seem to be any any sort of market or knowledge outside sort of a core fan base.
It's really weird over here as far as how I mean, like, they don't have shows like Firefest or even the Monsters of Rock cruise that happens. There's really not a lot of that there. I mean, we've been asked to do some festivals that are out here, but they're never organized or ran as well as those ones are. And there's really nothing. I mean, traditional radio that used to play us when we were new, they'll do a blurb when we're doing a show, but they won't play a song. They won't even play the songs anymore. And one guy got in trouble because he did play a song. He said, screw it, I'm going to play a tune when I'm done interviewing you. So it's weird over here. And a lot of the venues that we used to play when we were touring, I mean, we could tour all year going back and forward across the country. They're all gone. And it's really just the summer shows now. And really what you have is a lot of the older bands eating up those shows. Like there's some shows that just happen locally here, and it's the same bands every year. Honeymoon Suite, Platinum Blonde, Lee Aaron's joined the mix. Coney still does some shows, but they're like us. They do very few shows. It seems to be the same guys that go around every year, more traditionally like Honeymoon and the Platinum Blonde resurgent thing is pretty big over here right now. And other than that, there's nothing new to push, to really go through. And the ones that are new haven't really had the ability to go out and tour the way we did to build up that fan base. So if you don't have a hit single, and I mean Much Music, which is our version of MTV, God forbid they would actually play some music. It's all these stupid, shows they're doing now, the Kardashians and all the other crap that's out there, and they show movies. They don't play videos anymore.
No.
So it's really tough. And like I say, radio is either oldies or it's the new stuff. And what's huge over here is talk radio is really big, with a lot of stations where they do nothing but either sports or news, but talk radio. But it's tough. It's really tough to get out there and get it done here.
I mean, it's certainly in Europe, I would say probably the music scene now is as good as it has been for a long time with new music coming through and new bands. So maybe it will come down the line. Maybe it will travel over the pond and kickstart in Canada again. And maybe some of the young bands will realise actually there is something to do, and venues might might wake up and realise actually there is a market out there. If you actually, take a small gamble, you will get the punters in.
Yeah, and you know what? It's just because I don't think there's anybody that's really dedicated themselves to that kind of genre of music. And if they did, they would basically have the country to themselves. But there's less and less music people in the music business. That's the main problem, right across the board and right around the world. I mean, they've got rid of most of the bean counters that ran it in the 90s. And the early 2000s because of just the downsizing stuff. But there's not a lot of people that are music people that, like A&R guys. Like Andy Kern's one of the few A&R guys I know that's an actual musician, so he can sit down and he can write songs. He could sit down with a band and say, here's what you should be playing instead of this. And in the old days, that's what A&R guys were, like producers. They could sit down and play instruments and write with the band or kind of guide the band. A lot of these guys now that are A&R guys, I mean, they came out of a radio station and, or they just came through a music chain and they've moved up, or they were an agent that booked bands, not real music people. And I think that's probably a problem globally.
Yeah, and they're purely just a yes or no man based on a personal taste of probably hearing one or two tracks rather than actually getting off their backsides and going to see a band play.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we signed to Atco, we were on Atlantic and they moved to Atco on the first record. I remember going to New York City and going into the Atlantic building, and they did this big display because there was us and Lou Gramm was going to be there that day. And the one guy I was talking to showed me a guy that they had like 4 or 5 A&R guys on the Atlantic Atco roster. And he said, see that guy there? And I said, yeah. He says, he's been with us for 20 years and he's never signed one band. And we pay him a salary of well over $100,000 a year. And this is back in 1986.
Jeez.
Well, how does the guy keep his job if he hasn't signed one band and you're paying him $100,000 a year? They said because if he signed one and it flopped, it would cost us millions. So that was the mentality, right? Okay, fair enough. It makes sense. You're just going to pay the guy $100,000 a year to sit there and listen to tapes. But that kind of mentality, that kind of, when the fat days were here and the money was being printed by everybody and labels were making gobloads of it, you got that kind of mentality. And I think you've got a lot of people that are like that are in the business right now.
Yeah, so people, another thing that I always bring up is that people don't realise, maybe they are doing a bit more now, that most of the bands that are out there, have to work full time. They have to pay their way because there's not money coming in. They're not sitting back counting the royalties by any stretch. Yeah,
no, it's really tough. And you know what? Even with all this, the downloading and the iTunes and all that stuff, it's really been an excuse for a lot of the labels not to pay the artists. And that's why guys like Joe Walsh and Neil Young that are really vocal about this. I mean, I know that we're available for download on Amazon Germany for Young, Wild and Free. I have never received a penny from any downloads that's been done with the band. And I own all the band publishing. I bought it back years ago. And when I do get checks, I get checks that are based on quarterly physical sales. But there's no checks and balances in place to monitor that these guys are actually spending the money on. If you're Eminem, or if you're a big act, then I'm sure you're getting your money. But unless you got somebody sitting right on them, all it's done is, I know a friend of mine, I think he was suing Sony. He did the first Rage Against the Machine record, and he saw that it was the #1 classic album on iTunes, and he hadn't received a check in 2 years. And he used to receive a check every year from that album because it was such a constant seller. It's a classic record, it's the one that launched their career. But it just gave them an excuse not to pay the artists and the producers.
Well, I mean, it seems to be a pattern because I mean, a lot of people, Spotify's now a big thing, but maybe people don't realise how little they pay the artist for playing Spotify. It's something ridiculous, like a penny an album play. If more than 10 people play it. I think I saw figures, something like that. So the chance of a band actually making any money from Spotify is absolutely zero.
Yeah.
It's a crazy... I mean, on principle, I won't play anything on Spotify. I'd rather go and buy the physical product.
Yeah.
Because the money's got to go back. You've got to support the artist. Otherwise, suddenly, you're not going to have an artist. It is as blunt as that. And this is what people need to wake up and realise.
It's really heading that way. And the funny thing is, if you take a look, you just go outside and walk down the street, You have never seen so many people in your life with headsets on, earphones, listening to their phones, listening to, their iPads or their iPods. More people listen to music now than ever before in the history of the business, and yet there's no new artists coming up. There's no more guys getting the shot like Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, where you got 4 or 5 records to build up your career, tour your ass off, build that loyalty, and then boom, they were behind you and they would go for it. You get one record now, and if the next one comes out, if it does well, you might get another one. If that one doesn't do anything, you're out of here. And it's because people think that music is free, and labels are businesses. They're here to make money. They're not here to basically subsidize artist career or people's listening habits. You have to make money, and if you don't buy the physical product or you don't pay for the download, there's not going to be any new artists coming along, and a lot of genres are going to fall by the wayside.
I mean, certain bands have certainly sort of gone their own direction, and you can buy direct from the band, either a digital download or what have you, trying to cut out the middleman. And there's obviously some way of making money. I mean, is that something that you would do yourselves, or do you prefer to stick with the label route?
It's because of what I do now and the relationship I have with the labels. It's kind of easier for me to monitor. But I would be hesitant to give anything away ever again. With the internet, with Facebook, with YouTube, you really don't need them because anybody can put a CD up on the web or on Amazon or, play.com or streaming. Anybody can get it up there. It's the physical retail outlets are few and far between. The Targets of the world and the Walmarts of the world, they're just going to sell the top 10, the top 50 records. They're not going to get into catalog or get into anything that's not on the charts at this point in view. So we'll approach that. We've got, offers on the table to take it. Universal, I'd kind of done a verbal agreement with them, but now Warner's kind of saying, well, we want it. We're releasing all the old stuff. We want the new one. And we'll see. We'll see when it's done what we do with it. But it's artists selling on their own is really the way of the future for a lot of people. It's funny, too, because we had this AC/DC box crate that we were doing a deal with Sony. And we needed more. AC/DC just renegotiated their contract with them, and they're not allowed to give discounts on their stuff without band approval, which is great, And they're even saying in this day and age, they find it hard to believe that people still have that kind of power. Metallica's the same way. You can't get a deal on a Metallica record unless it's authorized by the band or the management.
Going back to AC/DC, they didn't go on iTunes for a long, long time because they didn't want the tracks as individual downloads, because they said, we are an album band. No, you buy the album or you don't buy anything. Yep. And I remember iTunes, famously Apple sort of saying, well, you will fail if you're not on iTunes. And in fact, the next I can't remember which album it was now, but the next album which came out, which was actually one of their biggest selling albums. They turned on iTunes and said, and your points what?
Yeah, I know. Bands like that have the fan base that they go forever and ever and ever. And they're exempt from those kind of guys that think they're power brokers like the iTunes. Let's face it, your average AC/DC fan is not going to go on and download an AC/DC track. He's a physical product guy that's going to ante up and pay $50, $75, $100 to go see that band, because he knows every time he goes and sees them, they're just going to kick ass for 2.5 hours and play nothing but hit songs. So they don't need those guys.
Well, Gerry, I've taken up more than enough of your time on the show. All I can say is I'm already seriously looking forward to seeing you guys and catching up with you guys in October. That is going to be an absolute blast. Really looking forward to the new album. Can't wait for you to get that out. And it's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks very much indeed. Cheers now.
Take care.